Good morning. What an interesting experience to be here this morning. In a way, it feels like it's been forever, and in a way, it feels like yesterday. I guess time is like that, huh? I love that song, Why Are We All So Afraid of the Dark? I've just spent 4 months in what some would say the dark. And what I realize is, what I've always put out to Spirit is that I want to grow. And what I realize is, we grow in the dark. When everything is light and happy and going well, we don't do much growing. I wish I had known that when I said, I want to grow. Perhaps I would have rethought that. And yet here I am. So, today I want to talk about storms. I don't know why, but I've been thinking a lot about storms. I've been thinking about almost 25 years ago on my honeymoon. We were gifted by my father-in-law a cruise through the Caribbean, and then we came back into Florida, and then we had 3 days, 4 nights at Disney World. And when we were on the cruise, every stop we made, we had a shorter amount of time at that stop, and nobody ever said anything. And then on the last night of the cruise, what I remember is we were in dinner, and the glasses of water were like rolling. And we all thought, this is odd. And we came into port the next morning, and they made this announcement that said, by the way, there's a hurricane chasing us, which is why we've been moving faster than we had planned. And when you get off of the ship, you cannot leave. Everything has been shut down. There are no flights leaving, so we will take you to shelters if you don't have a car to get out of town. Wow, welcome to the joyous honeymoon. So, as it stands, we had a car because we were supposed to drive from Miami to Orlando. And so we waited in line for a long time at the car place. And what I remember is people were taping the windows. People were making preparations for the imminent storm that was coming. And we got our car, and as we were driving, which I think it's supposed to be a 3 or 4 hour drive, and it took us 8 hours. And the freeway, it was a 2-lane, and there were 4 lanes driving because there was 1 lane in each ditch, essentially. And we were just barely moving. And at one point there was a stop. This is the first time I had seen road stops in the middle of the freeway between each side, because we don't really do that out here. But on the East Coast they do it that way. And you really didn't have to stop and park. You were parked, and people were just getting out of their car and going in, but there was no food left, there was no drink left there, so you'd go back to your car and keep moving. And we eventually made it, and we weren't sure what that was going to be like when we got to Orlando. And the thing I remember most out of all of that is we were at Disney World, and these storms would just suddenly blow in. This huge wind. Suddenly it was clouds, pouring rain, and then it was gone. And it was just a very interesting experience, and a honeymoon neither of us will ever forget. And then recently there was a storm forecast for here on the coast and in Salem and McMinnville, and it just happened that I had planned to come to the beach for a couple nights, and I had reserved a hotel. I was thinking I was ready to get away for a little while. And there was all this talk of this storm, and it scared me. And I thought, well, why go if it's dangerous? Will there be trees down to get here? And so I canceled my reservations. And I spent so much time checking the weather, right? Checking the weather. And then, as it turns out, it didn't pan out to be the storm that they thought. And Sunday morning, I decided, you know what, if there's still a place, I'm going to go. And so I did. But I was thinking about how much energy I spent worrying about what was to come. That was the thing about the storm. And why are we afraid of that darkness, because what I'm learning about life is that stuff happens. It's going to happen. So if we want to put ourselves in a place thinking that life is supposed to be joyous and happy and smooth all the time, we're not really living in reality. We don't really know what storms are going to come. And sometimes they're bigger than we thought, and sometimes they're not what we imagine them to be. So I had a storm come. I was not planning to cry today. And it's quite the storm when you get the news from the medical doctor sitting in front of you that you have stage 4 cancer. We are calling you terminal. And if what we're about to do doesn't work, we imagine you have probably a year left. Holy smokes. That's a storm that blows in out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. Now, I had been having neurological problems, and I know we talked about this, but I never in my wildest dreams expected it would be this. I was thinking, you're having a little nerve problem, we can fix it. Not this. So I embarked on this journey of 7 weeks of chemo and radiation to my head, which has been interesting because it's all one-sided. And I think to myself, I'm always thinking symbolically, what does this mean? And it's all like on my right side, what does this mean? So I had radiation, and so I've got some bald spots on my right side. I lost my right eyebrow, which was weird. The doctor kept saying, you're going to lose that eyebrow. I said, no, it hasn't fallen out, because I didn't lose my hair from the chemotherapy because it was a very low dose. So what I did lose was from the radiation beams going into my head, where they entered, where they exited, that kind of thing. And I finished my treatment 2 months ago. And about a week and a half ago, I looked in the mirror and, I'll be darned, that eyebrow is gone. And it's just, and my right sinus, and it's just such an interesting experience to have it one-sided, and my eye, it's still not functioning. But I've decided I will will it to work. Because if there's something to this mind-body connection, then why not try? I have nothing to lose, it's not working anyways. So I decided, what do I do? What would that look like? Well, it would look like not wearing a patch on my eye all the time. Because when I do that, essentially what I'm saying to my eye is, I don't expect you to work. And the nerves aren't working, but the muscles will start to atrophy as well. And so I decided, okay, the patch has to go. So I'm maneuvering life, forcing myself and my eye to focus as much as possible. And if I'm looking to the left more, it's because that's easier. So I'm trying to turn this way a little bit. But, when I drive, I have a patch over, I have a thing over my glasses, so, I'm safe. There's only one road when I'm driving. But when I'm in situations like this, I'm trying hard to focus. So that's still left over. And after the treatments, I was left with a whole lot of noise in my head. Now, the doctors don't know if that's going to go away, which is a little disconcerting, but I say yes, it will go away. There's ringing and a lot of noise. Construction, there you go, maybe deconstruction and construction. Yeah, right, that's always noisy. That's how I'm going to look at it. Thank you. So when I was thinking, well, what do I have to offer? Because, I've done a whole lot of thinking. And, there are times when you just tumble into the dark. And Randy must have known that with his song today. Because when those storms come, sometimes it's dark. And what I've learned is that, all right, let's see, how did I say this? Here's what I decided. I can't change that I'm having a cancer experience. But my attitude can change how I experience the cancer. And that's what I realized early on, is that, okay, this is mine right now. I have been given this to navigate. And that's not going to change. So I can either whine and complain and be afraid, or I can be grateful and look for the blessings. Either way, I'm still in the cancer experience, right? So that determines how it is for me. And what I realized is that it's so interesting, because when I'm in the most challenging time of my life, I can honestly say it's also been the most beautiful time of my life. Now, how bizarre is that? And yet, it's my truth. And I believe it's because I kept bringing my attitude back. Right? I just kept correcting. I would get off and I just kept correcting, like, autopilot. It's off and it just keeps correcting, and that's what I had to do. That was the spiritual practice. That is still the spiritual practice that I'm in. And what I realized is that through that whole experience, and I would be sitting in waiting rooms and I would hear people talking about how bad their experience was with treatment, how things didn't go well, their appointments were late, they had all of these complaints. And I was sitting there thinking, I've never had that. Everything flowed so smoothly. The doctors were so great. Every appointment was exactly when it was supposed to be. They always took me on time. I mean, if there was ever an issue, it was always taken care of very quickly. And it was just such a smooth experience. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think that I made it through really well. I handled it really well. Afterwards, it got a little hard. I didn't know it was going to be harder after the treatment. And it was. The last 2 months, the last week has been harder than any of the treatments that I had. Because I had a reaction to a medication, it set me back, and it was just really hard. And then my uncle passed away this week. And you think about death. And I thought a lot about him and his life and how much I knew him or didn't know him. And I thought about my dad. It was my dad's brother and their siblings, and what that must feel like to lose a sibling at any age. And I thought about my kids as they interact as siblings. And I thought about my brother. And then, of course, I thought about my death. What if those doctors are right? What if this didn't work? What if the things I'm still feeling means that it's still there? I don't know. And I thought I was too ill to go back to South Dakota for the service. And I thought, what if this was my last chance to see that side of the family, for them to see me while I'm alive? That's the dark. And then I have to say, so what if? What if? Right? We don't know. What I realized is none of us know how much time that we have. And yet, suddenly it becomes so important when somebody tells you, your time is ticking. I mean, all of our time is ticking, but what are we going to do? And so what have I learned in this experience is that all we have is now. And that God is in the present moment. When we let ourselves focus on the past, usually it's regret, it's disappointment, it's all of those kinds of things. God isn't there. When we allow ourselves to look too much to the future, what I find there is anxiety, fear. God is not there. God is right here in this moment now. This is where our love is. This is where our joy is. And this really, truly is all that we have. The past doesn't exist anymore. It only lives on if I keep retelling the story. And so as I thought about that, I thought about, okay, what do I want to do with this cancer experience? I've been very resistant to cancer support groups, to all of those things that say cancer, because I don't want to keep that experience alive in me. And so now I find myself in the mindful watching period, where they're going to do the scans again in early December, and we'll see. We'll see. And so I get to decide, do I want those scans or those doctors to get to tell me how long I'm going to live? Or do I want to just live? And we'll let God take care of the rest. And highest and best, that's what I keep saying. Highest and best, because I don't know. I know what I want, but I don't know what the plan is. Being mindful of my attitude is my spiritual practice. I realize that's my spiritual practice. It determines whether I'm connected or disconnected from my source. When I'm mindful and I'm here now, I'm connected. When I'm anywhere else, I'm not connected. That sounds so easy. It's not. We all know it's not. But that's the biggest thing I've learned. I also learned to open to receiving help. One of the hardest things, not being able to drive. That was really hard for me to have to rely on somebody for anything that I needed like that. And yet, it was very humbling as well. And I learned to surrender. Here I am. And surrender and accepting is very similar. As I think of those storms, I think of myself standing on the beach while the waves are roaring and coming in and the wind is blowing like crazy, and standing out on a beach and yelling, "No, this isn't happening." Right? This isn't happening. That is resistance, my friends. And while it sounds ridiculous in that context, how many times do we do that in our life? And we resist what's happening. And the pain and the suffering are in the resistance. When we just accept it, and we're not afraid of it, we're not afraid of the dark that may come through, it's so much easier to move through it. Mark Nepo says, "No amount of preparation can keep me from my experience." Isn't that good? So you can't keep the experience away, but you can decide and choose how you're going to move through it. And I came across this yesterday as Socrates. "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." And isn't that true? The more I learn, the less I know. Right? And what a refreshing place that is to be. I don't know. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what tomorrow holds. But I know my God is right here, right now. And I am alive right here, right now, just as you are. And in this moment, I get to decide, well, how alive am I going to be? I remember that no matter how bad it may feel, no matter how dark it may get, I know that eventually clouds give way to sun and chaos gives way to peace. Let's take this into meditation. Randy's going to play for us, so if you just get comfortable in your seat, close your eyes. That feels good to you. Let's take a deep breath together. Breathe in and let it out. Let's do one more breath. Take it in and let it out. As we enter into this holy place, the stillness within, I want to read a poem by Rumi called The Guest House. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows, who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door, laughing, and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And so we take those beautiful words inside, and we greet whatever comes, knowing that it is a guide from beyond. And so wherever you are today, whatever storms may be brewing in your life, open the door and invite it in. Ask it what it has to give you, to teach you, to grow you. Knowing that on the other side of the storms, there's always the sun and the light. And remember that right here, right now, is where God is. That's where peace is. That's where we find love. And so it is. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.